Less than 2 weeks into his administration, President Donald Trump issued a travel ban, what has come to be known as a Muslim ban. Whatever you call it, it caused chaos in airports around the world and real fear for people trying to come into the United States. With us today is immigration attorney Shawn Matloob to talk about that ban and the implications going forward. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you originally came to the United States from Iran, correct?
That's correct.
Before we get into talking about the Trump administration and the legality of the travel ban and what it means for immigrants, talk to me a little bit and to our viewers about your personal journey, how you came to be here.
Sure. So when I was 14 years old, I actually wanted to come when I was 12. It took me 2 years to convince my parents to let me go from Iran, being Jewish in a over 98% Muslim country. Most of my relatives, Jewish friends, had already left, but my parents didn't want to leave. So eventually, when I was 14, my father asked my uncle, and he agreed, and I came to what became a very long one-year journey that I had no idea it was going to take me that long to get to Los Angeles, where my uncle was waiting for me.
So what was that one-year journey like?
I fled from Iran to Pakistan and stayed there for about a month and a half till I was allowed to go to Austria, and waited in Vienna for about 10 months till I was allowed to be come here as a refugee, as a Jewish refugee, thanks to HIAS. That's the organization that helps refugees around the world.
Right. So would you say that that experience of being a refugee yourself led to you becoming an attorney working with refugees today?
Yes, absolutely. Working with refugees and all immigrants from all over the world.
How bad is the Trump administration for people trying to seek refuge in the United States? Both bad, and I'm asking the question broadly on purpose. How bad legally, just how difficult is it, but also just from tone? What does it say to people who are coming to the United States or trying to as a refugee?
Well, we knew it wasn't going to be good, but I don't think most people would have imagined that it would be this bad. I mean, the January 27th executive action put a complete stop to receiving all refugees for about 120 days, and then indefinitely for Syrian refugees. And who knows what would happen after the 120 days. Now, for now, thanks to our federal courts, there's a stop on that executive action, and we are waiting for a new executive action that may come in any day.
Right. Let's talk, though, about the ban that he put in place before the federal judge put a stay on it. How long did the Trump executive order actually have an impact? How long was it the law of the land, and what was that like?
Well, it was announced on January 27th.
Which was a Friday, as I recall.
Friday. And then by next morning, Saturday morning, ACLU had already filed the first lawsuit in Brooklyn. And by Saturday afternoon or early evening, the Brooklyn judge had already ordered a stay. But it wasn't clear that it was a nationwide stay that would apply to everybody until in early February, I believe February 5th. At that time, then the Washington judge ordered a stay that was nationwide and put a complete stop to the January 27th executive order. So
would it be an exaggeration to say that for a week, the immigration policy of the most powerful nation on planet Earth was in chaos, and that thousands of families were impacted, and thousands of flights around the world, not to mention ships, I imagine, as well, but mainly people coming in by air?
Absolute chaos, and it included cruises as well. It did include ships as well.
Now, I know you cannot talk about the specifics of the case, but I am aware of a case where there was actually a young gay man who was on a cruise that was living in fear. I know about it through just personal connections, and afraid that being on a gay cruise, he might not be able to get back into the United States. And this all happened in real time while he was on vacation, and he was himself of Iranian extraction and was afraid that he might get sent back to Iran, which, without exaggeration, would have been a death sentence.
Yes, if that would have happened. But worst case scenario in his case probably would have been a detention and being sent to jail. But since nobody knew, this was brand new. I mean, this just happened on Friday. So yes, for a cruise that was coming on Sunday morning, nobody knew exactly what would happen. So there were a lot of people who were concerned for him and for a lot of other people. I spent most of that Saturday and Sunday at SFO, and as you correctly stated, it was absolute chaos. There were, of course, a lot of protesters, which we were all glad to see them. But yeah, family members who were there did not know what to expect, did not know what would happen to their arriving family members, and chaos is exactly the word to describe it.
You know, I'm asking you to give hypothesis. This isn't your expertise, but you're an immigration attorney. Is this the way that immigration policy is generally carried out by a major nation?
Absolutely not. I mean, I've been practicing immigration law here in the U.S. for 17 years, and I have not seen anything like it. Usually when new policies come or announced, they have the effective time will be sometime in the future, at least 60 days or more in the future. So agencies that are involved can figure out how to implement it. But in this case, it became effective immediately. So the agencies, including CBP, Custom and Border Protection, that's responsible for arriving passengers, did not really know how to implement it.
Right. When a chief executive issues an executive order, who is left to translate what that means? I mean, it sounds like, in a sense, it was left to individual agents at individual airports around the country to figure out what was right. I heard one story, probably apocryphal, that one TSA agent, when asked, well, who do I ask about this? He said, talk to Trump.
Oh, well, it was even worse than that. It was left to airline agents to decide who to let boarding or not. Not even U.S. officials. These are foreign airline agents from foreign airline companies that had to make a decision of whether allowing individuals to board the plane. Individuals with valid documents, including valid green cards, long-time permanent residents, on that first Saturday were not allowed to board the planes. That is how chaotic it was.
So what is this? I'm sorry, please continue.
And throughout the rest of that week, we were getting reports of airlines all over the world, especially in the Middle East and Europe, who were refusing boarding to the people, to individuals with valid documents, even though there were some court orders saying that they should not be doing that.
Right.
But
So
at
some point we're talking about just the ability to communicate in real time. So if there's no clarity and you are an agent for, say, El Al or Turkish Air, you have people that aren't trained in U.S. immigration policy suddenly making decisions about people coming into this country.
And they are forced to make decisions by the U.S. government because there were reports that the administration threatened severe fines if they let people board who are not under the executive order should not be allowed boarding.
Right. Explain for our viewers the basis of the federal judgment by the federal judge that put a stay on the ban. What was the main reason behind the federal judgeship, the federal judge saying this ban is now, there's a stay on it?
Well, there have been many reasons. I think one of the strongest reasons was under the First Amendment, that this is religious discrimination. It's against majority Muslim countries. All 7 of them are majority Muslim countries. And the courts ask for evidence, that any evidence at all to show that citizens of this country would endanger the U.S. Government or people or anything. And there was no evidence. Both the Washington judge and later the Ninth Circuit judges asked for evidence, and the government attorneys could not provide any evidence at all.
So what do you think will be, and by the time this airs, perhaps we'll have a new travel ban from the Trump administration, what would the Trump administration, leaving aside how one feels about this politically or morally or working on behalf of immigrant rights, what would the Trump administration have to do, in your opinion as an immigration attorney, to make this ban constitutional?
As long as it's based on national origin, which it clearly was, or religion, which it also, I believe it was, I don't think it can pass. Thanks to our independent judiciary, they will put a stop to it.
Right.
Right now, there are reports that the delay on new executive action is because the administration has been asking FBI and other agencies to provide some evidence that national citizens of these 7 countries have either been a danger to the U.S. or will be in danger. And no agency so far has been provided that kind of evidence.
Right. So
and most likely because it doesn't exist.
Right. So as we would, say in colloquial English, they're trying to gin up some proof to substantiate their ban.
Yes, because so to give you specifically, during the Ninth Circuit oral argument, the judges asked the government attorney for evidence, and he mentioned 2 Somalis that something had happened with them. And the judges asked, is there any evidence in the record? And the government attorney said no. Right. And as far as I know, so far they haven't provided any evidence to back up their claims.
Yeah, I imagine that your phone and email has been kind of busy since January 23rd.
Yes, much busier. I'm constantly in catch-up mode with my emails.
Yeah.
Ever since.
Leaving aside the legality, we're talking about human beings.
Yes.
How catastrophic has been this tone coming from the current presidential administration on people wanting to immigrate to the United States? Or do you know, without, of course, talking about specific cases, of people who a month ago said, I'm looking forward to immigrating to the United States as a Muslim, as someone from one of these countries, that was doing everything legally, that now says, I forget it. Do you know of any cases like that?
Not personally, but I have heard reports, and as you've probably also heard, Canada has said that they will welcome the refugees and immigrants that U.S. is not. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be surprised if some people are changing their plans to move to Canada or other countries that are more welcoming. Right
so
now.
Over 30 years ago, you decided as a teenager that you wanted to immigrate to the United States as a young man, someone of the Jewish faith, which was very dangerous in Iran at that time. Do you think you'd have made the same decision now? As a 14-year-old Jewish boy in Iran, would you, under the Trump administration, want to come?
To be honest, I would say probably yes. I mean, still we're talking about Iran versus here. So even today, things in Iran are not where I would want to be. Mm-hmm. So I might have preferred to go somewhere else if I had the option, but since my relatives are here, that's why I came here.
Right.
The main reason I came here because I had an uncle who accepted that I come here at the age of 14.
We've got about a minute left. I would like you to give some, because I've seen the fact sheet that you sent, there is some practical advice that you would give to someone, whether they were involved in an immigration raid, because we're hearing that ICE agents are suddenly having their hands unshackled. I think that's the term that's been used. And there is, and tell me if you think I'm wrong in using this word, an aggressive tendency on the part of our immigration professionals in this country. What advice would you give someone who suddenly is either stopped at the airport or finds themselves in the middle of an immigration raid? Some practical legal advice.
Well, for those at the airport, if they're stuck at the airport, the main thing is if they have any fear of returning to their home country or wherever they're going to be sent, it's very important to make sure that they make that clear at the airport that they have a fear of returning to their home country. And then they should be allowed to remain and have what's called a credible fear interview.
A credible fear interview.
Credible fear interview before they're sent back. And if they pass the credible fear interview, then they should be allowed to remain until an immigration judge makes a decision on their case. For those who are here, now the rules have completely changed. So based on the January 25th executive order, that's a different executive order, the first one on immigration, now all 11 million undocumented individuals in the U.S. have suddenly become enforcement priorities. So it is very important for those who've been here, for example, for over 2 years, to make sure to carry documentation with them showing that they're here for over 2 years. But at the same time, do not answer any questions about their immigration status. There are red cards that I hope a lot of undocumented individuals would be carrying with themselves. It's thanks to Immigrant Legal Resource Center that provides them, that states the rights of the person on the card. And hopefully undocumented individuals have that card and will show that card to any law enforcement who asks about their immigration. All they have to do is provide their name and nothing about their immigration status and say that they want to talk to an immigration attorney. But things have changed, and hopefully people will educate themselves about the new changes and hope for the best, thanks to our independent judiciary and the free press.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. I would like to think that we would need to have you back on, but would like to have you back on later in this administration to see how things have changed and hopefully improved. Thanks for you.
Thank you.
Next up, our conversation with Dr. Raymond Dzola, talking about his experiences in a country that has been accepting a lot of refugees, Italy. We'll be right back.